Hello, CitizenCon! It's time from phase-free civilization to give you some stuff to do. Let's talk about location density. We've emulated nature as well as we can to make sure our planets are physically based and realistic, our biomes are emergent. But it's time to start populating the verse. Before we continue, let's first take stock as to where we are now. At the moment in the verse, we have these custom, beautifully made locations. Ghost Hollow, distribution centers, or even just some outposts. And these have all been handcrafted by our designers and artists, and they've been working directly on the planet. Going forward, this doesn't really scale. Server meshing is about to arrive, and we're gonna have a way higher player count. So those 73 bunkers across Stanton just won't cut it. In general, it's also pretty barren. No exploration gameplay. You haven't really put your character to use. So this means we need to go bigger. We need to change our workflow. We need to first establish a new benchmark, ensuring quality. And any location that you'll find needs to have its own unique personality and no repetition. We don't want you to find the same location twice. This is your exploration. As for that density, if you fly down to the planet, we want you to find something, let's say, every 100 clicks. Also, improve the mission experience. Going forward, we are modularizing all our existing locations and assets, where you're basically making a library of buildings and layouts. No longer work directly on the planet. All these modules and assets can be iterated upon and tested right in the editor for all the designers and artists. Basically, we're building a toolkit. We've got things like Frontier for our settlements, high-tech for emergency shelters, also utilitarian like our bunkers and distribution centers. They all have a function. Mining for our mining outposts, farming for the farmsteads, or just places where people live. And last but not least, the people as well. We've got lawful people like the new Citizens for Prosperity and Pyro. Unlawful, such as Xenofred. In different places, you'll find different people. Let's start building thousands of locations. Yes, I said thousands. I'd like to introduce to you Stararchitect. What Stararchitect allows us to do is directly on a planetary scale scatter all these new libraries and modules and assets and no longer work directly on the planet. As you can see, we're now able to make full-size locations, and they will look completely different based on where you'd find them, and it will reflect its place in the verse. Farms, mining outposts, bunkers that you find on Stanton. Stararchitect will intelligently figure out where the place is and what needs to be at the location. Let's look at an example. Farms. Its rules, well, temperature. Not every plant can live in every temperature, but the same with soil type. And then we can query the seed map to determine what plants you would find there. What are the harvestables? As for the targets, again, farm buildings, obviously. Power buildings, houses, but even animals such as our beloved quasi-grazers. Let's talk about coherency. You don't just want to find an outpost completely on its own, right? We want to make sure it really feels like people have built their lives here. We want to tell tighter stories, but also logical exploration. If I find one thing, I expect to find something similar, and also give the narrative developments. People build near rivers, on mountains, they build near town halls, they build near distribution centers. So to hit that bit of our benchmark, we make sure that locations are near each other and group them together. The effect it gives is a fully developed landscape with vistas and points of interest all over. And we group them together in what we like to call a cluster, like this one, that has 13 locations. Clustering means generating locations near other locations. If you find a distribution center, I would find forward operating bases next to them. But if you go even further out, you'd find mining outposts to funnel those resources to the FOBs. Go out even further, you'd find caves around them, because that's where they might find some of the gems. And then we can even specify the data on a cluster level. All of the factions that live at this whole cluster, any mining outpost, that would be the same people, but also what commodities they sell, to find on what resource you'd find. We have our mining cluster. Again, we can define what rules we should have. Rules, well, near a resource, just like our mining outpost, but also it needs to be on a lawful planet. They need protection. As for the targets, well, caves, mining outposts, but even trade posts. Now let's look at the other side of the spectrum, an unlawful cluster. What rules? They need to be far away from any other cluster, because they want to be isolated and do their evil deeds on their own. And also on an unlawful planet, such as somewhere in the Pyro system. For the targets, outlaw outposts, crash ships, because they would shoot them down, and also ruins from just places they just completely overrun. You'd find specific loadouts, and they'll be using weapons that you wouldn't find any in other legal system. So, now that we have a cluster, let's go even bigger. We can put clusters near other clusters. And we group them together, ranging between 10 to 15 locations each. And we group this into what we call a sector, like this one, that has about 120 locations. However, on a planetary scale, we can define how many sectors we should have. with each their own data and persona. And every single one of these locations is now ready for the mission system to hook up and give you gameplay, and for you to find a bunch of places on your own. And just on this side of the planet, can you guess the number? We've got about 3,042 locations. This means that Stararchitect, we're just able to, on a planetary scale, just define how many locations we need, what you'd find there, and to just give that full identity. And I won't just see you in the verse, but I'll see you in a denser verse.